The music and the performance and the fashion are one. I don't separate my art from my life. It is one whole thing.
Chewing on pearls.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Tom.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Patrick. And this is Chewing on Pearls, the show where we dissect and decipher Lady Gaga's chameleon career and its impact one pearl at a time.
So we're back to continue our series celebrating 15 years of Born This Way. On this episode, we'll be covering the video treatment for the third single from the legendary album, The Edge of Glory.
I'm on the edge.
Anyway, that song that we just sang was written by Lady Gaga with Fernando Garibay and DJ White Shadow, produced by Lady Gaga and Fernando Garibay. It was written in September 2010 on the eve of Gaga's grandfather's death. Gaga took leave to be with her family before returning to Europe for the remainder of the 2010 European leg of the Monster Ball tour and recorded this track at the Living Room in Oslo, Norway.
In an interview with the New York Times, Gaga spoke of the song's origin, sharing, "When my grandma was standing over my grandfather while he was dying, there was this moment where I felt like he had sort of looked at her and reckoned that he had won in life. Like, I'm a champion. We won. Our love made us a winner. They were married 60 years. I thought about that idea, that glorious moment of your life is when you decide that it's all okay to go. You don't have any more words to say, more business, more mountains to climb. You're on the cliff and you tip your hat to yourself and you go." That's what it was for me at that moment when I witnessed it.
Beautiful. Originally released on May 9th, 2011 as a promotional single for Born This Way, due to overwhelmingly positive response, officially announced the song as the official third single from the album on May 11th, just 2 days later, impacting radio on May 17th. The song peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned Gaga her 10th consecutive top 10 hit.
The song features a saxophone solo from Clarence Clemons of the E Street Band, which Fernando Garibay described as a bold move considering pop radio's aversion to instrumental solos at the time. Garibay described the collaboration to The Hollywood Reporter, stating, "Gaga and her family are massive Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band fans. She wanted sax on The Edge of Glory and asked, 'Do you think we can get Clarence Clemons?' I was like, 'Dude, you're Lady Gaga. You can get anybody you want.' So we set it up, and it was amazing. Clarence came into the small studio in a wheelchair. We played him this musical break in the song. He found his pocket and just started soloing in that section, and we kept the first take."
Clemens shared with Rolling Stone that he was honored to be paid by Gaga and her team for his contribution to the album, as he would have, quote, played for free, flying from Florida to New York on the day Gaga asked him to record, arriving at midnight and playing until 3 a.m. The saxophone solo ranks as number 2 of VH1's list of the greatest guest solos in rock history.
It truly is. Like, I still get
Yeah.
goosebumps. It's an incredible sax solo. I mean, he's an incredible sax player and musician and icon. And this was his last collaboration before his own passing. And it's truly very special. And we'll talk a little bit more about Gaga and Clarence as we break down the video. But speaking of the video, let's talk about some basic stats. So, features Lady Gaga in the starring role, go figure. The video ended up being directed by Gaga in collaboration with the House of Gaga, but was formerly by Joseph Kahn, which more on that later. Choreography, in quotes, and creative direction by Laurianne Gibson, styling by Nicola Formichetti, assisted by Brandon Maxwell, hair by Frederick Aspiris, beauty by Val Garland, and co-starring Clarence Clemons. The video was filmed on May 28th and 29th at Universal Studios in Hollywood, California, on like 2 of their like New York metropolitan set, like their like evergreen like New York soundstage sets, which I love, instead of just shooting it in New York. And then the video was released on June 16th, 2011, during an episode of So You Think You Can Dance. And I believe like a week later, Gaga was on as like guest judge, where there's that iconic image of her softly weeping in the teal hair and the Versace suit. And she throws her shoes at the stage and like is like,
Yeah.
in show business, when you dance good, we throw a shoe. It's like, okay, girl.
Yeah.
It's
What's
like some
interesting
queen
about
backstage just told you that 10 minutes ago. And you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. They were like, "You should throw a
you
shoe."
throw a shoe. Yeah. You're like, so
Um,
dancers, this is the thing we do. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I think that depending on where you look, Lorianne Gibson is not always credited as being involved at all on this
Right.
video, and we can get into that going forward. But what a classic little crew here, as we've sort of explored with the Born This Way videos. It's kind of just like what we know to be the House of Gaga that built the legacy that even Gaga to this day like refers to visually in her show. And yeah, just like such a star-studded lineup as usual.
Totally. So, some background for the video. Lorianne Gibson teased things would be, quote, getting fishy in a May 17th interview with Wrap Up TV when asked about the upcoming music video for The Edge of Glory. Then tweeted she had finished the treatment for the video on May 22nd.
Joseph Kahn, who worked with Gaga on AA, Nothing Else I Can Say, and Love Game, was scheduled to direct the music video for The Edge of Glory, but on the second day of shooting, creative differences between Kahn and Gaga caused him to leave the project. The video's original concept involved, quote, mermaids, couture doctors, a Puerto Rican badass willing to kiss Lady Gaga, and military men to wield M16 rifles, per a casting call leaked to E! News.
When asked about the change in direction for the video during a Born This Way press conference in Singapore, Gaga revealed, I had this whole elaborate setup for The Edge of Glory, but once I got on that fire escape in that one outfit, I realized that it was time to just have a moment of acknowledgement for myself as a 25-year-old who has been working so hard from the bottom up my whole life.
Chancellor Haynes, Kahn's on-set editor, revealed that Gaga's mermaid-themed performance of the song on Le Grand Journal was the actual theme of the original video and leaked photos of sets built for hospital, Brooklyn Bridge, and underwater sewer scenes, which you can still find on Reddit.
Yes, and we'll throw in the
yeah,
carousel.
totally.
So there's a lot of speculation there, but from what people have kind of said on forums like Gaga Daily and stuff, it seems like day one they shot with Khan on some of these sets and there was material. And then between day one and day two is when Lorianne Gibson said on the record that there was an argument, but Interscope said that there was creative differences and said that like the video was always going to be made by a House of Gaga in collaboration with Joseph Kahn. So we don't really know what happened, but I do think that there is something to be said for Gaga being like, I got on that fire escape and I just had this feeling. And you can kind of tell in the video where she's like, this is what it needs to be. And I think, and this is just me speculating, I think it was actually Gaga being like, I want to pare back. I want to scale back. I know I came up with this crazy treatment. I know we got all these models. I know we built a prosthetic mermaid tail, but now I'm here with Clarence. We're on the set. I'm really feeling that this is an ode to my upbringing and my family, and I want to pare it back. And I could see Joseph and his team being like, excuse me, we just
Yeah.
did all this fucking work and
Yeah.
what? So in my head, that's how I, in my fantasy world, perceive how it went down.
Yeah, I wonder if some of that had to do with Gaga's sort of other press statements about this song and really and not just press statements, but her own like personal experience in what this song is about, her grandfather's death and the kind of like legacy that she felt he was leaving behind in this very like gracious way. And then kind of like taking that step back and being like, wow, this is a lot for what I'm sort of trying. This is a lot for what I intend this song to be and mean
Right.
to fans, to myself. And it's interesting. There's a lot of speculation about what the story was going to be, and we'll
Right.
kind of get into this with you and I, but a lot of speculation that it would be Gaga escaping doctors trying to turn her into a woman from a mermaid,
Right.
and throwing herself off the Brooklyn Bridge to free herself and land in the water and be free.
Right. Right. And like you said, we will get into this because in You and I, there is this narrative through line of, trying to fix the broken girl. And in one scenario, the broken girl is a mermaid. And I do think, too, that there's something to be said about the American Idol performance where, she's with Mark and they're dancing on top of the cliff or whatever, and they throw themselves off. I think that if it was the narrative that they're trying to fix Gaga and change her from a mermaid to a woman, and she has this lover that he ultimately sacrifices his life to be with her and jumps off the Brooklyn Bridge with her. He'll
Yeah.
fall to his death, but she returns back to the ocean where like she belongs.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and I don't want to jump ahead to our next episode, but Gaga, when she was talking about You and I, was talking about in this video, I want to be all of these different versions of me that like have suffered all of these different traumas. Like, of course, like, why wouldn't I do that in a video? But it's funny because then here she's saying, well, it's just me. It's just
Right.
me like living up to all of the hard work, the career I've worked for or whatever. But it is like really interesting to speculate as to what could have been. And like what would have been different about like the You and I video if the mermaid thing was used for The Edge of Glory.
Right. And I really do love that performance, the Grand Journal, which will include in the, I don't even know if that's how you say it with a French accent. I'm like, that just sounds
Yeah, I don't
European.
know.
Yeah, like whatever. We'll include a clip in the carousel because it's really cunty. It's like Versace
Yeah.
mermaid with a little teal bob.
Yeah,
Just
and
sitting, just
all of
perched.
this kind of yeah, all of this kind of stirs up this question of like when did Gaga like when it was it when she was making the album? Is it when she was conceptualizing kind of the alien plot line of Born This Way that she was like mermaid? Like I really
Right.
want to know like when she like clearly this was something that she knew she wanted to get to in the visual lore of Born This Way in some capacity, whether it was like it could have lived and died with one live performance, but it didn't.
Right. Right.
So it's fascinating.
And then, not to jump the gun even more on a future episode, we'll be breaking down the Sydney Monster Hall, which includes the iconic, controversial A Mermaid in a Wheelchair Bette Midler saga. So stay tuned for
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Oh, so much to discuss on Chewing on Pearls.
Always. Our jaws are sore from all the chewing.
Yeah.
But back to the video. The video itself is pretty simple and straightforward, but very emotional and evocative of how much the power of music means to Gaga. The video starts, Lady Gaga slowly emerges from behind a building on an abandoned New York City street corner, doused in red, blue, and purple lights pouring out from windows of the buildings and alleyways as steam blows out from the drains below. When the first verse of the song begins, Gaga emerges from the window of what is meant to represent her old New York City apartment, and she climbs out onto the fire escape. The video consists of intersplicing shots of Gaga dancing and singing on the street, on the fire escape, and on the steps of the front of her apartment building with Clarence Clemens and his saxophone. After Clemens' saxophone solo, Gaga hunches over in front of the building, steps, and kisses the sidewalk. The video concludes with a close-up of Gaga's face before she turns back through the window into her hazy apartment.
During her Inside the Outside interview with MTV, Gaga said that she missed New York and that after the releases of the previous two projects, she felt so empty that the only way that she would know New York again is to fuck herself up and lick the streets, which is expressed in the scene where she kisses the sidewalk, as you said.
Gaga described shooting the video with Clemens to MTV, sharing, "He is by far one of the most influential people since my childhood. His saxophone on all of Bruce Springsteen's music was the soundtrack to many nights with my mom and dad. Shooting this video together was a turning point for me and for my life and my career. And in this video, I'm dancing on the fire escape of my apartment. Now, that fire escape looks exactly like the one that I used to dance on at the time when I was living in New York City. We left one window red and one window blue. So those windows, the blue represents the beginning and the red represents the end. And I'm there dancing in between, somewhere in between life and death, somewhere in between heaven and hell, in the purgatory of life, on the edge, with you."
Notable in the video is the absence of backup dancers, elaborate choreography, or a symbolic plot, components that have been fully predominant in Gaga's other music videos. Aside from Gaga herself, Clemens is the only other person to appear.
Also notable is Gaga's single outfit featured in the video, a full ensemble from Gianni Versace's Fall/Winter 1992 Miss S&M collection, supplemented with custom shorts and gloves by costume designer Her Majesty and Nina Peter Hutna. Gaga also wears a plethora of vintage Versace Medusa medallions and chains lended by Donatella, who had yet to open access to the Versace archives at the time. This cosign from Donatella marked the beginning of the designer archival pull trend, still present in pop culture today, and enraged fashion critic Kathy Horn, who felt Gaga was unworthy of the honor. If you haven't listened to our VMAG memorandums, where we break down the Gaga Kathy Horn beef, go take a listen.
Go take a
'Cause there's
listen.
much to chew on there.
I feel like now would be a good time to talk about like what this video means in this series that we're doing and in the legacy of Born This Way. And I wanted to quickly read something a fan that I've been talking to on Gaga Daily, named Carrie, wrote a bunch of stuff, wrote a bunch of blog posts back in the day at the time of these releases on her blog, The Epic Causery, and at the time it was called Swiper Boots. So obviously, as we know, projects go through transformations, but she wrote, people get so used to Gaga going ham on their heads. That said, we have taken her core, most raw self for granted. We forgot Just Dance. We overlooked her bitter end. We lost the beautiful, dirty, rich one in the midst of the bad romantic. We dismissed the electric kiss. And in that, we took her humanity and most basic stripped down self for granted. We became greedy for the grits and glam, and the higher and higher we wanted that divine, exalted one always. We took the majesty of a prematernal New York doll for granted, but she didn't. And I think that, I don't want to put words in Carrie's mouth, but I love this little bit of writing. I keep thinking about the fan response at the time and that there were monsters who were mad at Gaga at this time. And I love that Carrie's piece of writing kind of reminds us that this video is emblematic of a more personal and private Gaga, and that's something we should be grateful for.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that there is something powerful about her at the time really paring back in this way where there's like so much hype and anticipation around the album. And I think it's, we should mention that concurrent to like the Edge of Glory video being filmed, it was like this was the release of the album in May, and they did that Google commercial featuring the Edge of Glory that Lorianne and Gaga put together. That there was like a call for monsters to submit themselves, like singing and dancing to the song, and it was featured in this Google commercial that was like such a celebration of the song itself and people just like enjoying it, whether that be them dancing, singing, doing their own cover on their own instrument. So it really was about the music in this moment where, Born This Way and Judas, obviously about the music, but about kind of the visual world. Whereas like leading into The Edge of Glory as a single, it was always about New York City and the way that the song made Gaga feel. So why would
Yeah.
this video not be about those two things?
Right. I love that when we're talking about like Born This Way as a kind of text and as something that like the album itself and like everything that Gaga said about it, about rebirth, about marrying the potential that you have and sort of like reinventing yourself constantly. And we've talked about this kind of like futuristic fashion film for Born This Way and this kind of allusion to this Neo Jerusalem and Judas. And here Gaga is like, oh, I'm born this way over and over again. And this is like where I come from. But it's also in this way that's still fantasy because she's on a set in Hollywood She's in her head to toe 90s Versace. She's got her Cruella hair, which is an allusion to the blonde that is Lady Gaga and the brunette or dark hair that is Stephanie. And I think that's kind of what's fun about this as well in hindsight, is that there's so much fantasy and kind of like world building and like mythos here, even though compared to the other Born This Way videos, it's pretty pared back.
Right.
And she kind of continues that tradition with Marry the Night. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, this is the realest video, but like you said, it is like a closed soundstage set of New York, like, she's not actually on a New York City street. She's on, like, a Hollywood depiction of what New York reads as, like, this,
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
gritty other timeline. Like, this does feel very, like, 1980s New York City. Like, this isn't 2011
Yeah.
New York.
Right. Like this set was fully like in a Batman movie in the 80s or
100%.
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about Gaga, like at this time, like during Born This Way. I think in the Judas episode, we talked about them kind of launching her as like an auteur of like
Mm,
visual, like as a director and all of that stuff. And I feel like Born This Way sort of did the same. And up until this point, of course, the music is the focus. She's a musician first. But I think maybe this is just speculation. Maybe, like you said, there was a part of her that was like, oh, this is really like getting ahead of itself in this other way. And I'm seeing fans kind of like take all of this meaning, and I do art pop, like that's my thing, but like as a reminder, this is about my earliest influences, and as much as this record is about pushing dance music and electronica in the direction that I see for it, it's also about honoring so much of what came before me. And I feel like
totally.
there was a bit of scorn when she released Born This Way because people were like, you're not acknowledging your roots enough.
Right.
And here she literally has Clarence Clemens.
Right. Well, and I do think it's interesting too that we do need to unpack the whole this was a promotional single for the iTunes countdown to Born This Way. Like they were going to drop songs before the album and it was really only The Edge of Glory and Hair, right? And then the album came. But the idea that a promo single was doing so well so early compared to Judas, which, Gaga was on the record being like, this is the most important thing I've ever made ever. Like when Judas came out, that clip that we put in the carousel when the guy's like, you're telling me that this is, and she's like, no, this is the one. Like, don't get it twisted. This is the one. And then Judas, kind of a mediocre response from the general public. Edge of Glory popping off. They sent it to radio. Gaga's like, it's the single. So there is this
Hmm.
kind of interesting, like, she at the time was still really motivated by charts and keeping up what people had come to expect from her. Judas still got her a top 10 or whatever, but Born This Way, Judas dips, then The Edge of Glory is on the come up, where it's like the critical response. Fans and critics, music critics, were so into the song. And it was
Yeah.
this combination of, this studio rock anthem situation with a disco electro house influence, but also a piano ballad written on the eve of Gaga's grandfather's passing. So it was kind of this perfect combination of all the things that people loved about Gaga sonically. And then when it came to the visual treatment, there's all this pressure probably to keep the momentum going. Then, there's these disagreements on set. What's happening? Is it getting too big? Is it getting beyond what it is? And when Gaga talked to, I forget who I even said a couple minutes ago, she gave an interview where she was like, yeah, it was about me just like taking a step back and being like, I'm 25 and I've been working from the bottom up my whole life. And like, this is me honoring that, like honoring the fighting spirit, honoring the chick who would like dance by herself on her fire escape, like to Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Yeah. There's so many factors at play, I feel like, in the decisions made here, including like Gaga's desires to like truly just showcase that aspect of her history and like the lore of who she is as a person. I'm sure there were label pressures as well around like delivering something universal, and that like as The Edge of Glory sort of took off in this way, they were like, oh, wait a second. Born This
The
Way did great because it was the lead single of her album following the Fame Monster. Judas, you know, was what Judas was in the sense that like they were pushing it, I think, for the fans.
right, and polarizing for the general public.
Yes. And so being able to kind of like give Gaga this identity in this video, especially after the Madonna comparisons to Born This Way, the song, and Judas, the video,
Mm,
I think was a very wise choice as well to sort of
right.
like be like, here I
Well,
am.
there is something to be said about the universality of this song in particular. I think a lot of people who aren't huge Gaga fans really love this song. And like,
Hmm.
this is the song that you'll like hear at a sports bar or at a baseball game. You know, like kind of has this like, I don't know, more kind of American pop radio vibe to it that is more in line with things that the general public has been accustomed to hearing throughout the decades. Like, very different from what was on the radio in 2011, albeit the great saxophone wars of 2011 with Last Friday Night and freaking Katy Perry, which is like so funny. But I think it was like tapping into something that is like, I don't know, it's an anthem. And it's an anthem that isn't about identity. It's about something we all share, which is death, you know?
Yeah. And it's a
Like,
love
that is
song.
the inevitable too, like, it connects us in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and Yeah, it's a love song. It's a love song.
Right.
She's not just on the edge, she's on the edge with you. You know what I mean?
You.
Like
Yeah.
she's singing, there's multiple layers to this song. Like she wrote it inspired by her grandfather's death, but it's also about like being at the end with someone
Right.
and what that means. And I think that love songs are always more universal. The choice to make You and I a single was
Mm.
probably informed by some of those same decisions as well, the like the musicianship behind that, as well as the ability for her to just play that on a piano, and the universality of like being in love in America in late stage
Right.
capitalism. I don't know, like there's a lot there. I think it's interesting that I love that this was a single, knowing that it was the last song on the album and very intentionally placed as such, because I
Mm.
think when we're just taking the 5 singles and the video treatments as we're doing in this series and zooming out and seeing this in the middle of it, it's such a I have such a different read on it from like a art critical visual storytelling standpoint. There's something so earthly and grounded about this compared to the other videos, and yet so like we're in another realm.
Yeah,
And I
like,
think
removed from
striking,
reality.
yeah, like striking that balance is so fascinating, and again is like totally extrapolated and like blown up and turned on its head in Marry the Night, where it's also this kind of retelling that is
Right.
completely fantastical, which is what Born This Way is about.
Totally. And I do think that there's something kinda getting back to, like, the fan response and, like, what it felt like to be, like, really in the throes of being a little monster in 2011 when this came out. I remember I was on a little, like, weekend trip thing, or, like, I don't know when, it was the summer, with, like, friends down to the Cape, and I remember the video came out, and kind of all my friends that I was with were, like, dogging on me in a way, being like, "What's going on with Gaga? Like, why is she doing this? Like, why is this boring? Like, why has she lost the plot? Like, has she lost the money? Do they not believe in her?" Kind of just being like, "I'm underwhelmed." And me sitting there being like, "I love this woman so much." Like, just, like, immediately seeing it and watching it and being like, "Oh, yeah. W what is there to complain about?"
Right. And especially coming from a woman who has said time and time again. Just when they think that they expect something from me, I'm going to give them something else. And from a sartorial perspective, we talked about how the Judas video brought sort of the Born This Way era a sense of style that would last from then until the end of tour, essentially.
Mm.
And here I think this is like the epitome of that.
Yeah.
And like everything from Judas was leading to this look, and every Born This Way look
From
or
this
from
look
here on
on,
out
always comes back to this. Yeah.
comes back to this. Like, this is such a centerpiece of when I think about Gaga as a chameleon visually, and I think about Born This Way, I think about this bob.
Yeah, this bob, the two-tone hair, the black and gold, and some, like, mixed metals, I think. I think there's, like, bronze on the boots or something. The, like, vintage factor, the high-low of, like, archive, and then, like, little booty shorts that they
Mhm.
just made for her, like, on set, you know?
The little, like,
Um,
face sticker.
or
Um,
the liner.
mhm. And, the part where she's wearing, like, a Girl Scout beret.
Yes, oh my god. Which, oh my god, I didn't include it when I was doing research, but, like, I think it's in the Slant article that I'll reference later when we get into critical response, but the journalist that, like, wrote the piece from Slant says something along the lines of, like, "I don't know if I can trust this woman because she decided to wear this disgustingly ugly mustard beret." And I'm like,
That's
"That
so
is the least
mean.
offensive hat I've ever seen." Like, what? Like, I could show you much more worse hat choices. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
fuck off.
I think I love the beret because they didn't need to include it, but there's something about those shots when she's wearing it that feel like she's just a girl.
Yes, no, especially with Clarence, and it's like he's got his hat, she's got her hat. They're just
Mhm.
sitting on the stoop, just 2 stoop kids in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, and visually telling people about so many of the influences of this
Mm,
album with just two people on set, you
right.
know? Because people, I think, unfortunately, Gaga was saying some of the most profound and insightful things about her work at this time, but it was also a time when people didn't really care as much as we did. And they were looking at what she was wearing and they were talking about how crazy she was in her music video and on that TV show performance or whatever. For her to give this video where she's like, oh no, this is the birthplace of this record. It's this fantasy version of New York where this highly skilled, legendary musician is serenading me and I get to dance around to it. You know what I mean?
It's like, this is the kind of song I can write, and this is what my voice can do. There hadn't really been a single at this point that had, I mean, she has her moments, the, like, last chorus and refrain of, like, every song where she, like, pops off, but, like, this whole song is her vocally popping off.
Totally. Totally. I mean, that's like the big critical takeaway of Born This Way from music critics at the time was if they loved it or hated it, they were like, she is expanding
Yes.
upon her voice in a way that we have not heard on her discography so far.
Yeah.
And The Edge of Glory is like a perfect showcase of that.
And
Um,
I think is kind of the most, like, universally acclaimed song from the album when it comes to, like, real music heads and journalism. Like, it's kind of a standout in a way where people are like, "Oh, everything aside, like, this is just, like, a really fucking great song." Like, take away the Gaga factor, just, like, on paper, this is a fucking good song.
Yeah. Yeah. I lyrically love the second verse when she says, I'll be dancing in the flames tonight. It isn't hell if everybody knows my name. And thinking I resonated with that, especially as a teen, thinking about like, well, I guess I didn't really resonate, but I loved thinking about community and like having the people around you is the closest that we have to heaven on earth. And that Gaga here is sort of saying, you can condemn me all you want, but like as long as I'm in a room where people know who I am and I know who they are, then I'm good, girl. And I think that's sort of leans into some of that bit of lyricism leans into some of the other messaging on Born This Way about being an outsider and being different and all of that stuff.
Which is funny because my reading of that lyric is always like, "It isn't hell if everybody knows my name." It's like, isn't that ultimately what I wanted? For everyone to
Oh,
know who I
interesting.
am? So, like, this can't be hell
Interesting.
because this is actually what I want and, like, what I've been asking
Mm,
for.
that's a way smarter read. Yeah,
No,
like,
but I mean, but that is, like, the yeah. I mean,
I guess they're
every
they're the same read, really, just
right,
like through different perspectives. But yeah, it isn't hell if everybody knows my name. Like reading that from the standpoint of like a very famous woman,
right.
is interesting. And then again, there is this element, and we've said this 80 times now in this episode, but there's this element to the video, whether it's the lighting or the smoke or whatever, where it is sort of like a purgatory or an afterlife. And I just remember being a kid and being fascinated, especially like growing up religious and like being fascinated by this being her conception of that,
Mm.
and as a place where she's completely alone or like she's completely in her own world of like joy and music, and there are elements to this video where she's literally just having fun, um
Yeah.
and like rocking out to her own music.
Rocking out to her own music, and I have an affinity for I have, like, a playlist of music videos that I call Solo Serve that features, like, a single
Mm,
performer, it's, like, really fucking giving it, and of course, Edge of Glory is on there. It is the first time that Gaga is showing that, like, she can hold her own as, like, a captivating, charismatic performer without the bells and whistles and dancers and scenes and schemes and props and narrative arc, for better or for worse, and to mixed results, which I think this is a good time for us to maybe talk about some of the critical response.
let's get into it. So Sal Cinquemani of Slant Magazine gave the video a positive review, calling it a visual triumph with breathtaking art direction, comparing the video to Michael Jackson's The Way You Make Me Feel, Janet Jackson's When I Think of You, and The Pleasure Principle, and the film Crimes of Passion. All of them, of course, being 1980s videos and films.
Christian Blavelt of Entertainment Weekly was surprised by the stripped back video treatment, adding he felt the video clearly referenced Madonna and the Broadway musicals Rent and West Side Story.
Pop Justice, on the other hand, called the video boring, and Jarrett Weiselman of the New York Post stated the video was rubbish, declaring it foolish to expect that Gaga would never stumble, because despite the preternatural image constantly presented, she is only human after all, feeling the video was lackluster for such an over the top anthem designed for arenas.
Damn.
That pisses me the hell off.
I know. But I can see at the time where it's like, she's, like, building in, like, what will she do next, and the imagery and the
Yeah,
fantastic nature, and he is, like, billing this as, like, a misstep.
right. Like, she is only human after all. I'm like, that's the point.
Right, right.
She's human after
She is a
all.
person. Yeah, yeah. Way to miss the point. Um,
Jarrett.
yeah, Jared. Leah Collins of Dose questioned if Gaga was simply swooning with nostalgia for other pop cultural nuggets that have featured the same New York City backdrop of fire escapes and brownstone steps, or just attempting to be saving a metric buttload on the budget. So there was kind of this like snarky, is this her vision or did the shoe drop? And they were like, rein it in. There are
Right.
parameters now. Gaga's not the Interscope darling where she gets whatever she wants and they're gonna throw money at this. It's like there's like a thinly veiled misogyny in everything always. And it's like the idea that maybe she had the thought on her own that she wanted to do this. It's like that can't be what happened. It had to be that someone told her no or something happened or there was a disagreement in an argument and she didn't get what she wanted rather than it being like her saying, yeah, I this is what I felt and what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I think that there's something powerful about, and I'm not saying that like Gaga and her label or her team at the time were some like masterminds thinking about every which way that everything would be received, because everything at this time was either praised or torn apart, like
Mm,
that's what Gaga, she was very polarizing. But at the same time, like thinking about the decision to do this, and again, not giving another video that was in the lineage of something like Alejandro, Telephone, Born This Way, Judas, which are like back to back at this point, was a way to keep the conversation stirring as well.
yeah,
And actually, I think served um, what even the mainstream to an extent understood to be Gaga's authentic musicianship through this record. And I
totally.
think that this video and the decision to like push this further to be an official single speaks to that change in Gaga's career. And people don't talk about that a lot. People talk a lot about the change that happened when she did A Star Is Born or Joanne or Tony Bennett collaboration. But this was something within the kind of like pop era space that did the same thing, even if to a
Totally.
lesser degree, but it did that.
Well, this video, like, pissed off a conglomerate of people that had an expectation and then reached another group of people that maybe never connected with her.
Right. That's exactly it. And Born This Way, for that that is just one of many, many, many reasons that Born This Way is so widely regarded as her magnum opus. Not just because it's incredible, but because it had the capability to reach so many different kinds of people, and it did, and it
Yeah,
did. And so I think that's kind of the, uh, the fated kind of, nature of someone operating at the peak of their potential, is that regardless of the hate, regardless of the blind praise from super fans, there's like a legibility and a marketability to pure talent.
right.
And that's just it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think something too that I have to remind myself because we're so used to the way that Gaga like moves now in 2026. It's like she is an icon and a legend and like beyond like pop star, like releasing singles and playing the game. Even though, I mean, she still is that, but that is not the main focus. She was communicating so freely and openly at all times with her fans, most likely in ways that were not approved or sanctioned by her management and record label, like
Right.
her tweeting constantly lyrics or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And it's like the Born This Way into art pop is when she really was like, every week there was a new project and a new item and a new thing. And I'm designing this and a fan will win this and we're going to do this. Like there just was so much information at all times that it's hard to know really what was happening. And like for me, I think about being a young artist in my 20s, being 25 again, and it's like it really was like that, like and now here she is, she has all of this access and power and capital to make her dreams come true. I would be on this, like, kind of, like, cosmic whirlwind of, like, fantasia and, like, thinking of all the possibilities at all times. So, there is something, like, refreshing about her kind of, tweeting a week or 2 before they film this, "I just finished the video treatment," and then her being like, "But then I got on set and was like, 'Throw it away.'"
Yeah, yeah, that's like such a good perspective to like bring back into the conversation too, because it was such a different time, and it was the intersection of Gaga and all of these factors working for her.
Mhm,
The culture, the fans, the critics, the label, like she had the support of the culture to make what she wanted and for more. People wanted
mhm.
more Gaga in 2011, and her label gave her the resources to do what she needed to do. And I think that in some ways, sometimes I think about this, like her communicating with the fans so openly also was a way for her to be like, see, the people want this.
Right.
Hey, label, you think this idea is crazy? Guess what? I just told
I
them we're
just
doing it, so we're doing it.
we're doing
Yeah.
it. Right, 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 right.
Yeah. I wonder if that was part of not like again, like not to like make a crazy mastermind out of Gaga, but to think about the relationship between business and artistry and the way that her label knew that her fans wanted her to be herself and show her mind. You know, I'm sure there were still limitations and things within that, of course, but like um yeah, it was just like such a like fans fanning the flames of like propelling this woman to peak expression and her being a 25-year-old artist, like you said, with the resources to be like, fuck it, we're doing it, you know?
Right, right. Well, and I do think too that, also kind of taking it back to how Gaga's been talking about her career now, you know, she won her Grammy and she was talking about how she knows how difficult it is to be the only woman in the room and to be fighting so hard for what you want. And at the time, it was probably a tool in her toolbox of like, okay, I know that I don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to me dealing with like the big wigs. But if I tweet some nonsense and 500,000 people like it, then I can come in and be like, well, I've planted the seed.
Yeah. And like at a time when the influence of social media was still being figured out in the industry.
I think Harper's, right, just wrote that she was the first and the last true digital pop star diva. She's the last one because now social
Yeah.
media is beyond what it was. She was the first to really emerge in the digital age and also the last of a true superstar. No one will
Yeah.
actually ever be able to be that again because of our access to anyone and everything. Anyone can be a star.
Yeah. The niche quality of pop music and the way that it's marketed as opposed to like back then it was sort of like if you can't you're not a pop star if you can't like make it with everybody to a degree. And I
Yeah,
think that's kind of a quality that sometimes people tear her apart for now, but I think it's because it's her type of star is so at this point foreign in the landscape of some other people making pop music.
I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. She is showbiz.
And she has a foot in two worlds in terms of, music, but we could say she has 12 feet in 12 worlds of, fashion and theater and all of it. But it's interesting to read the Edge of Glory video as this kind of both intentional and happenstance in some
Mhm.
ways. Gentle steering or like writing of the Born This Way story and how that served her career then in a really impactful way, but how that also has contributed to that sense of her superstardom now in that you hear the Edge of Glory at the sports bar.
Yeah, and I think it's just like it's a monument to her artistry and her talent, but also a testament to her ability to make the situation work for her. Like,
Hmm.
we don't know what the circumstances were, but we do know that she ultimately delivered something that is impactful and people still talk about 15 years later. And
Yeah.
not so much in the like, ugh, that flop of a single,
Yeah.
like that's not the takeaway.
Yeah. I had this vision the other day of like I watched this and I had this vision of us like we've talked about throwing a Gaga music video viewing night where it's like front to back all of Gaga's videos. And I had this vision watching The Edge of Glory where I'm like, yeah, this 15 years ago this was this video that her fans were like we wanted more and critics were weird about and all this stuff. But I had this vision of everybody 15 years later being like standing and cheering for this video in
Oh,
particular
totally.
in a different way. And I think that it I would guess that it is finding its way back into the sort of legendary the halls of legendary music videos in ways that at the time people wouldn't have predicted.
And that's the thing is she knew on that set, she was like, "I am Michael, I am Janet, I am Madonna.
Mm.
I am making one of these videos."
The solo serve, yeah.
And like she said, people aren't gonna appreciate it now. They're gonna appreciate it 20 years later. Here we are.
Mhm, mhm. I'm gonna say something so morbid. Forgive me, Gaga. We know you're listening. Diva doll. I'm sorry, what did Carrie call her? Prematernal New York doll.
Yes.
I've always thought when she goes, this will be the song. You know how when music artists go, there's a
Mhm,
song,
mhm,
and, I remember, like, when Michael died, which was
mm.
in 2010, I think, or 2009, maybe?
2009, yeah.
Um, and, like, Man in the Mirror, and my dad is a huge
Mhm.
Michael fan, and, like, Man in the Mirror being the song that played every
Everywhere.
time that there was some kind of random, like, 2020 special about him or, whatever. And I remember when this album came out, um, and thinking, "This is that song.
This is like
This
the
is the
legacy
one."
song, the in
Yeah.
memoriam, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't think when people, like, you know, 2 generations below us are, like, 50, I don't think they're gonna be playing, like, Abracadabra when they're, like,
Right,
celebrating this icon. And
right.
even though Abracadabra is a fucking smash hit, this, like, encapsulates not only, like, the spirit of her sound, but also the message of what she stands for in a way that is, like, totally universal and, like, speaks to the striving that was her not just being on the edge of death, but on the edge of superstardom, which is all she ever wanted
Yeah.
when she was young. Anyway, not to be morbid.
No, but I get what you're speaking to because I forget who it was, maybe it was, like, The Guardian or something. A couple of years ago, they did, like, a list of, like, the best Gaga songs of all time, and Edge of Glory was number 2.
Really? What was number 1?
I don't it was either, like, Poker Face or Bad Romance, I think.
Mm. At the time, I got really sick of this song, I'll be honest. My little bratty teen self was like, "Why is this the only Gaga song that's on the radio?"
See, I was the exact opposite, where it was like anytime this song came on, I was like fist pumping in the air, like
Yeah.
thrashing my hair. I was like, "Play it again."
I think it was my own insecurity and, like, protectiveness over Gaga and over my perceived individual relationship with her,
Mm,
in my crazy gay child head, where I was
mhm.
like, "Oh, too many people love this."
Right.
And for you know what I mean? And, like, it's kind of like that naive young queer idea.
They love it, but they don't get it. They don't understand
Right,
it.
like, yes, yes, like, I actually happen to know that Gaga wrote this on the night before, like,
Right, right, right,
being a
right.
little bit that about it, but it is such a special song, and, um, it hits so well. When you give
Every
Born This
time.
Way that full spin listen, and you get to the Edge of Glory, it's just like, wow. She's still singing, bitch.
Still singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is one of the greatest.
Mhm. We're not saying any no consonants. It's
Oh, my favorite thing is when she does it acoustic, and at the end she goes,
Yes.
she does that like, it's like, "What are you doing?" She's, like, not even saying words. The, like, "with you" is like,
Yeah, not a consonant in
yeah,
sight. I would love to end this episode with a little morbid note again, which is that there's this art pop interview in, um I forget which magazine, it might have been Harper's Bazaar, where they ask her what she would want her headstone to read. And this is like one of my favorite Gaga interviews. And I always thought this was interesting because there was an interview before Born This Way where they were like, "What would you title your autobiography?" And she said, "I was born this way." like getting cute with it.
Mhm.
And she said that on her headstone, she would like it to read, "She spread love with every invention." And I always thought that was so beautiful. And it's because of that like connection that I made to The Edge of Glory as kind of a phoenix type of song. Um, that I like linked that little tidbit in my head to this song as well, even though it was in an interview that was much later than this. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, I do get it. And I love the term invention because she's like, "Oh, well, don't limit me to just music."
Yeah, and at that time she was like, "I'm making an app."
Yeah, she's like, "I art, music, fashion, technology."
Mm-hmm. God, I love this woman.
I know.
That's the
Crazy
takeaway from
bitch.
this video. You can't, yeah,
Yeah.
you can't watch this. You watch this and you're just like, I love her so much. Like I
I
know
know.
this girl. This girl
Yes.
lives
No,
inside of
totally.
me.
Right. And that's
Like
where I think it's like if you were like not that we need to get into who's a real monster and who isn't, but like when you saw this in June in
we can.
2011, yeah, we can. It's like I was just like so happy and proud of her and like was not like, well, where's the mermaids? Like
Right. It was just like,
I'm like she's like wearing archive Versace and like
yeah.
yeah,
And she's like just being herself. Yeah, like tour on stage Gaga
yeah.
captured in a video. So perfect.
And her kissing the ground, it's just like so and her with Clarence is so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed shortly after, like this
Mm-hmm.
song came out and I think they performed was he with her for American Idol? Maybe? I think
Maybe.
that was like maybe his last like performance. And also just like so sweet that he felt so honored that she wanted him and he was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." I'm like getting on a plane.
Yeah. That's the thing about Gaga. Musicians see musicians. There hasn't been a
Yeah,
legend that hasn't been like, she's an icon.
right.
But yeah, on this Bruce Springsteen ass song, I'm so glad that she got him to come and that he was so happy to join her. Um, yeah.
Well, I think we've reached the edge. Oh, glory! Thank you for joining us for part 3 of our 15 years of Born This Way music video treatment extravaganza explanation station.com.org.
Put that on a t-shirt, girl.
Yes, mama. And don't forget, a pearl a day keeps Joseph Kahn away.
Girl. Ain't that
Keeps
the truth?
Lorianne Gibson away.
Okay, well, bye.
Chewing on fun.